share their experiences. I'm sure both good and bad, which they have seen, and hopefully it will be an interesting discussion, which all of you will, I'm sure will find something that will help you in whatever you are planning within the industry. I think what we'll do as a starting point, let's just get everyone to just say, the initial feeling that they have about the topic that we're going to discuss, about delays in hotel projects, and what is it that you think has been your experience? Has it been positive, not so positive? To set the tone of the discussion, and then we'll take it from there. Yeah, Suma?
Good morning, everybody. Just to briefly introduce myself, I head real estate and development for a large group. So look after both development and what is traditionally called projects, so technical services. So as you all know, we are owner-operators. So we started off with our own hotels and building our own hotels. One thing is, projects and project delays. We all have realized that we used to build projects much faster in the olden days than we do now, because of the complexity, because of the complexity right throughout the whole process, right from land acquisition till actually building and getting a hotel operational. So projects have definitely at one end become easier because you have better technologies, you have more professional consultants, architects, designers, contractors available, but at the other end it has become more and more complex. Today the way we see it is, if you do a project in 4 years' time, that's fantastic and that's a great achievement. But I remember our teams back in the days of Asian Games, they claimed they built the Taj Palace in Delhi in 18 months. So they keep reminding how they could do it in 18 months, and today, when you do it in 4 years, you give a big pat to yourself. So projects are definitely becoming complex.
Vineet?
I represent Brigade Group from Bangalore, and we have a clear focus on hospitality as one of the 3 verticals that our company is involved in. We are primarily into residential, and then we are also into commercial retail and of course hospitality. Of the total pie, let's say we generate about 70 rupees from our residential business and the remaining 30 between commercial retail and hospitality. So far we have about 750 keys already operational, and we are targeting about 2,000 plus keys in the next 2 to 3 years. And all these hotels are under different stages of construction and development. We already have 4 operating hotels. One recently opened in Chennai, which is a Holiday Inn, 202 rooms. So for us, in terms of talking about project delays and the challenges that we face, it's been a kind of a mixed bag. There are certain aspects of the project development that are within your control, and that is what we try to control very aggressively. And then of course we have certain factors which are beyond our control, which are mostly sanctions, approvals and permissions. And we have to figure out a way how to sort of expedite that process as well. So I guess we'll discuss as we go along.
Sure. Jaideep, hi. What's been your learning or experience? So
having worked in five-star hotels for about maybe 25 years, I moved to the hospitality space in 2011, and rather the restaurant space in 2011. And after that, recently I've been doing projects as in putting up restaurants. I have also been associated with projects in my hotel days when I put up as part of the pre-opening teams of Hyatt in Kathmandu as well as in Goa. And I've seen both sides of how things work or don't work in terms of delays, both from the operator's side as well as from the owner's side, since I worked in both the spaces. Restaurants are a different ballgame, and delays do happen there as well. Recently, I have put up restaurants in Bombay which are doing extremely well, but having said that, they have also gone through the pains of delays for various reasons, which we'll discuss in a few moments. So that has been my journey, and I think delays are more to do with personal experience in terms of as Mr. Lamba pointed out a few moments ago, of not knowing the business very well, and that's how things start. So I'll share more of that as we go along. Thank you so much.
Yes, Keys has been around now for about 10 years.
Yeah, we've been different.
Yeah, 2006.
2006 we started.
We started,
It's been,
yeah,
years.
with Nicholas Bergruin coming in and making that investment in India.
Correct.
How's the journey been? I recently read that you guys are pumping in some more money and looking at expansion.
Yeah, we put in some more money now. So good morning, I'm from Bergruin Hotels. We've been in India for the last 10 years and we built our own hotels. We have 1,000 keys now on the ground. And we also started managing hotels for other owners, and we have 1,000 plus keys from them. So when I was actually going through the whole presentation which you're making, I think I could tick mark most of the points which you raised because we've encountered those, we learned from those. And as we gain with experience, we've been able to actually value add on most of these areas when we actually work with other owner operators where we try to get them into the whole thing of going live with their own properties. And I think as a place to work in India, maybe from where we were 7-8 years back to where we are now, there's been an improvement. There's definitely the climate has changed completely. The potential to actually grow the business, the potential to get a return on investment is much higher now. Banks are more receptive to the whole idea of lending. And we've also been experiencing a lot of interest in terms of hospitality as a sector. And that's the reason more investments are going to be blowing back into the environment. So project delays, when you put up the chart where you said about the cost of construction in India versus the other countries, and the RevPAR index was not that different because you actually only said the cost of construction is 2x, but the RevPAR index is only 1.8. The next chart which you put up, which is the cost of debt, is the one which actually created the whole trouble for India. Because UK at 2x of a RevPAR actually gets a cost of debt at 1.25%, whereas we are struggling with 10% ideal situation, but owner can actually look at debt at 12.5%, 13%. And the margin for error actually on project cost is very minimal for us. So that's actually the planning execution stage which you were talking about. I think that's become very, very critical for India. And I think over a period of time we started realizing that, and people have become very professionalized. So the return on ego I think is started coming down, and return on investment is the focus is now on. So I think that's been our experience now.
Sujjain is the only member in this panel who's not really a hotelier from that extent, but understands hotels better than all of us sitting on this because he deals extensively with owners on the legal aspect, and his firm does a lot of work on the contractual obligations for owners, including a lot of work on hotel management contracts, which they're often hired to negotiate on behalf of the owner. So Sujjain, what's been your take? For example, do you experience return on ego slowing down with owners?
Thanks for that. No law firm starts off with a business plan saying I want to be a hospitality lawyer.
Right.
Because till 15 years ago there was only Taj and Oberoi, and there was no opportunity for anyone to know anything about hotel management contract. So I was lucky that I remember the Accor group coming in very early on and looking for lawyers in India, and as a firm we took the chance. And I went to Australia to learn about hotel management contracts. And because Accor was both an operator and an owner, I had the good fortune of learning perhaps both angles of it. Moved on from there, and one thing leads to another. People pass on the word, and I think now under our belt we have about 75 to 80 hotel transactions over this period of time. But what has happened is a lot of these have taken on from management contracts to have been created to something standing, and you sort of like that you were part of something what was an MOU, and now it's a nice 5-star or 7-star. But along the way, there are many which didn't make it and which are still struggling. And that sort of brings me back to the other part of our practice, which is infrastructure. And hotels, as you rightly said, is a large component of either real estate, service industry and infrastructure. And all of these industries seem to face the same issues. Lack of planning, lack of clarity of roles, and a lot of the time the contracts seem to be structured towards liquidated damages or termination, which honestly in the way we are looking at it now, that can't be the way forward. It has to be more of a partnering concept, and you've got to have the carrot and stick policy, whereby you do incentivize people for doing better than you expect them to do. And then yes, there is the stick, but it's always there, whether you write it or not. That is the law always provides you. So the more I think we get into this concept of managing the risk appropriately and not dumping risk which otherwise can be actually kept with the owner and not just thrown on a contractor. If we are able to allocate that risk sensibly, I think you get to a more equitable outcome.
I think it's a very interesting point. Coming back to what was there in the presentation about the causes for delay, and I think Vineet mentioned it while he was speaking, that there are two aspects: one that you can really control, and one which is a little external to you. And while we continue to work with the government and put pressure on the government on reducing the time it takes and the bureaucracy that is involved in getting licenses and sanctions and permissions, I think there is a larger role on the internal environment as well. I think the way we manage our own projects, I think if we were able to substantially improve that process, that in itself I think will bring down the lead time of completing hotels. Let's talk a little bit about that. Suma, what's been your experience both internally, since you also are an owner and an operator, on typically what has been your experience, and what do you think we can do to help in getting reducing that time that we take in building hotels?
I think one of the key learnings from our experience has been to spend enough time during the planning process. And it all starts from from deciding and putting a brief together on what kind of a hotel you want to build, to what it is going to cost and the feasibility. And while these seem very simple concepts, that yes, you need to know upfront what you want to build and what it is going to cost, but the extent to which you can detail it out and flesh it out, rather than leave it to just very high-level conceptual statements, is critical for any project to start off on a good start. Often what happens is the concept of what you're going to build is driven by maybe the person who's actually at the helm of creating that project. And then as you start detailing it out, there is this huge pressure if you have a piece of land where approvals are going to be complex, and different places even within the country, like Bombay will have a certain different approval process, Delhi. So there is this whole pressure to go and start. They say let's bung in initial plans so that we at least get some approvals to begin construction come through the plinth, and then we will go send revisions and drawings to revised drawings to then go and get revised approvals. So you start off in a hurry, and then you put things in pipeline which starts defining the contours of what the project is going to be like. So for us, I think the biggest learning is not to rush into implementation, but instead spend enough time in both planning and costing and understanding what it is going to take to build, and then related to that will be financing. I think for us, if you don't spend enough time there, then execution is going to get more and more complex.
You will spend more time at the execution side. Vineet, your take?
Yeah, I fully endorse what Suma just said. What is also essential when talking about internally controllable kind of aspects is that one, of course, is to know what you want to build from day one. Secondly, set a budget for it. We have an internal budget that, okay, we want to spend X rupees per key, and that's going to be for either a 3-star hotel or a 5-star deluxe or a luxury hotel. We set the budget. In fact, we share the budget with all consultants and architects who are taking on board. So from day one, everybody, every stakeholder, everybody is going to contribute to making that hotel knows what we are getting into. Secondly, I think where we go generally wrong is the sequencing. I think that within a hotel, when it comes to the final fit-outs particularly, we made a number of mistakes in terms of sequencing the whole thing. Whether you want to put the electrical switches first or whether you want to put the wallpaper first, simple examples. Sometimes you go wrong there. And that requires a lot of rework. And the rework is expensive, it delays. So I think essentially what we do is we put the whole schedule on track. We also, let's say, typically give maybe a 30-month target for a business class hotel, or maybe a 36-month target for a 5-star hotel, depending on the number of keys that we are building on the total square footage. And then really drive it aggressively. We have our internal review mechanisms. I sit in review meetings every week. Every Monday, in fact, I spend half a day just reviewing our projects with every stakeholder, every department, whether it be procurement, liaison. Liaison today, incidentally, has become a very, very critical department for all hotel building. It's become a full-time job, and you have professionals now who are into liaison. I think that's essential.
Yeah, I think that's really where the science of the information and the managing the external environment is.
If you don't, I just wanted to add a point to what Vineet said. Often we start with the budget saying we want to build at X, maybe 60 lakhs per room or crore per room. One of the challenges we have faced is this whole starting point of an X crore per room, because just to give you an example, when we built our hotel in Amritsar, we said, oh, it's a Vivanta, it should be X, 80 lakhs per room. And then when we started planning, then we said, oh, it will need huge banqueting spaces. 120 rooms is good enough because the market can't take more. Then you have this huge banquet space which became even bigger as you started planning, and huge venues. So now, while the room count did not change, the cost definitely kept increasing because you're building these huge public spaces, and suddenly somebody said, hey, but now this has become a crore a room, So where did we go wrong? We haven't increased the room number. So I think this whole, as he said, budget setting process itself has to be done in many different ways. Cost per key is just one way of doing it. Eventually, if you build an extra square foot, it's going to cost more, whether you add it to a room or not. So I think while it seems simple to talk, when you actually get down to doing it, you could arrive at different budgets for the same hotel with the same space that you're going to build. So I just thought I should
Sure. I think ultimately the definition of the hotel is going to define what the cost is going to be, the amount of public area that you're going to build, the various elements inside the hotel you're going to build, the facilities inside the hotel will define it. I think the cost per key is a matrix purely, and ultimately it gets divided into various. What's been your learning at the Hyatt in some of the pre-opening roles that you've done or hotels that you've been involved in building?
See, as far as Hyatt is concerned, they have a pretty much a template to go ahead and do the hotel. But where owners are concerned, of course, there has always been an issue as to whether the standards of Hyatt and the owner's requirements will match or not. I remember an instance in Goa when I was part of the pre-opening team in Hyatt there. Obviously, the spends that Hyatt expected the owners to do were not going to be coming. I could see that, not going to be coming in the way that it has to come. So, the fund flow was always affected because the owners never expected the requirements to come up in the stages that it should have been. So, I completely understand from the point of view as to how an operator should define stages and also make sure those stages are given well in advance to the owners for them to be able to make sure the fund flow is correct. That's one part of it. Secondly, the standards that are expected to set up by Hyatt or for that matter any other well-known hotel. Those standards are not very well understood by owners in many cases, as a result of which they expect the prices, so they don't expect the prices to be paid as much they would like to, as in, if, for example, the owner says that I can make do with a particular piece of equipment which is cheaper, and Hyatt says no, you can't because you need to buy this particular brand of machine, that's where the clash arises. And these things have to be planned out to be sort of agreed upon well in advance to be able to execute properly. So I think planning and communication between the owners as well as the operator has to be very, very good. I think that's where a lot of progress is happening.
Vikas, which is the fastest hotel that you built and which is the slowest? In what way?
Fastest, I think we would have built a hotel in 24 months. And
Wow.
slowest,
That's like the Indian Yamka Book of Records.
yes. So we could do it fast because obviously we had time to plan in advance. But speed that Suma was saying is very critical. So we had a flexibility to actually plan in advance because we knew we were going to launch and we had a land already in advance. And the slowest hotel, so we never built a hotel. We still built a hotel in 3 years. And the other thing is where we got stuck. And actually the opening day, so I think the last mile is where the most amount of effort needs to actually go to actually open the hotel. You put all the effort, but you get stuck at the last mile. If you can't get those permissions on time, get it right. So that actually slows the speed down. On planning part of it, like I would like to just give an example. It's like in an economics test, we have a joke in the office. Like in economics test, you have certain kind of points, like 4-5 points, which you can chipkaw in every answer. That's the same thing which happens when you have a project planning meeting. They have these contingencies and they have this 6-7 points which they can give for every reason of a delay. So there could be a transport strike, there is a flood, there is a something on the sand not being there. So there will be like those 8-9 things.
Internal force measure.
Internal force measures are already there. So we actually say, okay, we start the project, we say these are the contingencies, it's going to be there. Assume 3 years, once in 3 years you will have a flood, you will have a transport strike, you will have labor not being available, you will have sand not being available. But we still want it to be done in 3 years, so please plan. You want 1 month the contingency per year, you please plan it accordingly. But the end date has to be 3. And then, you work it around that because otherwise you're just left to, shooting a target which keeps moving. And the environmental situation is not going to change, it's just going to be the way it is. So I think those kind of learnings have started coming in and that's where we've focused more, made our systems a little more tighter and that's helped us to get going faster.
Sujjain, help me understand with your experience with hotel management agreements and on the opposite side, many a times operators instead of negotiating on behalf of the others. The clauses that operators have in their hotel management agreements, you think that they are often too rigid and can cause delays?
But as you know, hotel management agreement today for tax and other reasons are broken up into your operating agreements and agreements that either refer to the brand or refer to help to be provided to the owner to create the certain brand standard. So the one that matters and what we are talking about is probably the pre-opening contract, but it is also related to the hotel management contract because very often, and this is an odd situation where they are actually negotiating by saying that if you don't open the hotel by X date, then we have the operator actually puts almost is in a blackmailing position by telling the owner that I can then have a right to walk away. Now I understand where the operators
no-go fees, walk away,
and so that leads the owner to really have very little bargaining power. But of course, the reason why operators are saying it because previously, while agreeing to build and operate your hotel, they've foregone some other opportunity in that region. So there is some quid pro quo there. But I think where things seem to go wrong is that sometimes owners, in the eagerness to close a hotel management contract, or sometimes being forced to close because operators, given the bonuses, etc., that they all get for closing contracts, they really push very hard for a certain closure. One or two areas where I've seen problems is where you blindly sign off to clauses which say that the health and safety requirements of the operator in the US or wherever, those requirements will prevail over local law. And I think that is a very dangerous clause to give into because as real estate owners and builders in this country, you are used to dealing with a certain size of your corridor and the way health and safety is created here. And not knowing that 2 months before opening, someone from Chicago comes down and says, oh God, this is a fire hazard and I'm not going to allow it to be open. So you get into those very, very difficult negotiations at that stage. So it's important rather than we blindly sign off on clauses like that to say, okay, show me, let my architect also have a look at what your conditions are. And this goes to a number of areas in the building of hotel. The other thing is, the pre-opening contracts where often the operator either waives a fee or gets a very small fee actually because the benefit is more in the hotel management contract, that I feel that their heart and soul is not there in giving you actually the advice that you need on a more constant areas, because they tell you we will make 3 visits from Singapore and that's it. After that you keep paying us X and Y. And that also makes it difficult for the owner there, because a lot of the planning won't work to suit the operators guys coming down exactly within those 3 days and so. So you need to spend perhaps a little more money and a little bit more time in negotiating that to make sure that you get the best out of the operators, service providers and your own service providers, so that there is less hassle over there.
Absolutely. I think the HMA is a very important sort of document and something that needs to be signed very carefully with all your eyes open. It tends to be a one-sided document when you start with. If you get good advice from people such as Sujjain, hopefully you'll get the right document. Of course, with experience, Vineet, you signed some very tough documents, I know. You're a very tough negotiator from whatever I hear in the industry. But having said that, I want to come to a little quick point before we wrap up on, in your experience, Vineet, over the last several years that you've been building hotels, is there more technology that you're adopting? Is it helping in reducing the time, or are we still a little, in the same manner as we used to build several years ago? There's a very interesting thing I read as a snippet, and I didn't get the opportunity to read it completely, but it was alarming for me that the Empire State Building, which used to be the world's tallest building till other buildings came up in New York City, I think it was built in 1930, and it has over 100 floors or whatever. And it was built, sir and lady and gentlemen, in 13 months. So it shocked me on how in 1930 they could build that building, the tallest building that time in the world, in 13 months. But having said that, just back to my question, is there more technology available today? Are we doing things a little differently, or is it still the same grid, brick, mortar, everything the same?
No, as far as we are concerned, we are sticking to the old world technology. We are not getting into the prefab, precast and all that, because I don't think you make for luxury hotels with precast technology. But however, budget hotels now, more and more budget hotels are getting into that technology. And China is taking the lead. As you know, you keep reading about in the newspaper that China did this hotel block in 3 months flat. But that of course is excluding all the planning, pre-planning, sanctions, all those are excluded. It's just the actual putting up the Lego blocks together. So, but as far as we are concerned, I think technology remains the same, but what has happened is that our internal planning and aggression has improved quite a bit. Earlier, for example, we had just maybe an 8-member team doing one hotel. Today I have, in our hospitality SPU, I have close to 100 people, and who are all busy doing parallel. For example, to give you an example, that I've been with Brigade Group now for 11 years, and these 11 years we have delivered 9 properties. So that's an average of less than a year and a half, I think. So I think that's the way it works. You need to work simultaneously, you need to work parallelly. You need to pre-plan, make sure that every block falls into place at the right time. That is very, very important. One block falling at the wrong time screws up the whole thing. I think that's what we really follow. I think our team is still on MSP, the MS projects, they still monitor projects on that only. Right. They're not getting into any new ERPs, though of course we keep getting the BIMs of the world and everything coming in, but we are very comfortable with MSP.
Really?
Yeah.
So, are you doing it any differently, or are you also?
So there is definitely, I would say, technology on 2 fronts. One is construction and building technology, and the other one is technology to monitor and to plan your hotels better. And we do use technology in both these areas. One is, of course, in planning stage itself, you use BIMs and other models where you can actually see how, especially when the designs have to be coordinated between, and specialists, consultants that are on board. I think having technology to help you do that better, it does save some time. Then there is building technology. Now there is always a trade-off because it comes at a cost. And if you're going to save huge amount of time and start your hotel earlier, then there is a benefit that you can justify. But as we all spoke, one of the areas where huge delays take place is licensing, permitting, approvals. So often what happens is when you spend a lot of money on construction technologies, you more or less, it is outdone because of delays somewhere else. So it ends up becoming an expensive route to take. However, having said that, when we do resorts in locations where it is difficult, for example, right now we're doing a property, a resort in the Andamans, although part of India is actually closer to Thailand, Phuket, than it is to India. So how do you build there in an eco-sensitive place? So we do some bit of work off-site and then just assemble things on this side. So we are using technology, but selectively, and where it really makes sense, rather than just blindly follow them in every project.
Right.
May I just add one very important factor to this delays, so-called, from approvals and sanctions from the government authorities. Why are these delays happening? In most of the times, the reasons are, to some extent, we are responsible because we deviate. We have an original sanction plan, and then we make changes, we do some redesigning, and we don't resubmit the plans, and then we want the plans to be approved by the government. That's the time they get hold of it. And that's what causes the maximum number of delays in trying to liaise with them, so-called liaise with them, whatever has to be done. Approvals take time. So I think we also need to take the responsibility that once you have a sanction plan with you, stick as much as possible. Go 100% compliant if possible. I think you'll save a lot of time.
Typically, I think in the Indian context, that is our single largest problem, that we never build. In my experience of transacting hotels, where we've been involved in the buying and selling hotels, it's rare to find a hotel which is 100% compliant to the building plans. There's another thing that I wanted to ask you, Vineet, since you are strictly an owner and you don't operate and you deal with various brands. In your experience, both in your current role and earlier, does the brand add time to the project or does it save time?
I think it all depends on how you manage the brand. I think that
because you typically need to send every drawing to them.
No, not necessarily.
As
I mentioned to you, from the time that we built our first Grand Mercure Bangalore and then thereafter the Sheraton Grand Bangalore, I think the mindset of the operators in India has also changed dramatically. I think earlier they were stuck on to certain brand standards and they would refuse to budge and they would refuse to be flexible. Today I think I see a lot of change. I think the change also happens because the way you interact with
that's because you have multiple
the relationship that you build up. We are working with 4 different brands today and we have excellent relations with all of them. And today I find a lot of flexibility. The only thing as Sujjain just rightly pointed out, the only thing they are stuck up on today is the FLS, the fire life safety. No brand wishes to compromise on the fire life safety aspect of it, but they have become very flexible in the rest of the areas. So I think if you work with them, the latest hotel that we opened was last month, the Holiday Inn in Chennai. It's a 202-room hotel with IHG. We only had issues, I wouldn't call them issues, we had areas where we had a bit of a difference was on the FLS part with the IHG. But the rest of the areas, they were very, very flexible and we were able to open the hotel on time. And the hotel is not entirely ready even today. For example, there are certain basement areas that need to still complete, but they allowed us to go and start the hotel. We are commercially open today. I think there's been a lot of change. I think it's very important for us to manage the brands, also the way you manage it.
Sure. I think, Vineet, with your track record now, having delivered many hotels and your relationship with brands, I think it's a little easier. I'm still not convinced that for the first time entrants who are just forging their relationship with a new brand, whether I'm not still sure whether the brand adds time or takes away time, right? Because there are certain adherences that you have to do, share drawings, then visits from there and approvals from there, etc. Of course, all in good intention and good meaning, obviously, to get the brand standards right, and at some stage probably it saves you that effort.
I think just to interrupt you there, what also happens is that in my experience, what I've seen is that once the brand or the operator knows that you also know the business, I think that the respect comes automatically.
Obviously.
If you are a first-time developer of hotel, if you want to have your first hotel being built and you want to tie up with one international brand, as long as you know the business, even theoretically, I think the operator will start respecting you from day one.
Correct.
But if the operator senses that you know nothing about hotels and you want to just build a trophy asset, just to sort of
And you don't have the right people on board.
and you don't have the right people who can talk business with you, then they tend to sort of be strict and they tend to be inflexible, they tend to impose themselves onto you. I'll give you a small example. A simple thing like they have a brand standard for par stocks for let's say the linen in rooms. We generally go along with that, but then we need to also question them that okay, you're talking about a 3 par for a room linen, but for 200 rooms, so you're talking about 600 pieces. Are you going to give me 100% occupancy from day one? So if you talk like that, then they understand that you know the game. Then they immediately come down. I say I'll stick to your projections. What are your projections for the first year? Your projections for the first year is a 40% occupancy. I'll give you 3 par of 40%. So that's the way you need to talk to them. I think you know that.
Which comes back to our point of understanding and knowing the business. Because what I want to ask you is that Keys is largely in the sort of economy and mid-scale sector, and a lot of work on the economy, where it's largely repetition of design, and you follow a cookie cutter sort of approach. Is that helping you in building faster? Are you using some technology which is also helping you build faster, or not so far? It's still more or less the same.
Yeah, so Keys for the other brand, actually, yeah, we are in the cookie cutter world. But we've got a couple of brands. We've got a brand higher up, which is Keys Prima, which actually is available for properties which are beyond 4 stars or categories. So there we are open and flexible to the designing part of it, and because of being in and developing those 1,000 rooms of our own with the same model, yes, it's given us efficiency as in we know all the suppliers, vendors with whom we will be working, are very clear about what needs to be delivered in the room. We have an off-site model also for furnishing and stuff where we actually get it done and then transport it back to the site. So that really cuts down time in terms of actual execution of the room. And we also have the designs are pretty uniform and simple to follow. So it's not very complicated in terms of what needs to get into the room. Depending on the room sizes, we are able to fit it in and maybe deliver the room within the same cost parameters and the timelines which we cover. So that's added value. But as we speak, we're actually also getting across centers. We're getting more flexible in terms of what actually we will be building as these rooms going forward. So we are reinventing all of this.
Right. I think we need to wrap up given the time that we were allocated, and we'll also have a little question and answer session. So what I'd like everyone to do is go across the panel, and I'll start with you, Sujjain. On one point, idea, advice that you'd like to give to the audience, which would help in better execution of hotel projects.
I think it's not so much the speed of execution. What is done prior to that, as everyone has mentioned, in terms of pure planning and therefore sequencing events is vital. The time otherwise taken is the same. Yes?
So that's got to do with the speed as well as the timing. But I'm overall saying that when the plan is actually made with a financial perspective in mind on what's actually going to be the return on investments and payback period, I think it's very critical to follow a right model in terms of what's going to be a debt profile and what's going to be the equity infusion with a lot of buffers built in for time and cost overruns. So we need to have the flexibility to actually be able to take care of those contingencies, and eventually, so it's not a model. So as you said, it's a cycle which actually gives you a 4-year bump, and then again there is a time when you need to sail through lean times. So I think that's where the critical part of actually investing into the business is important. So I have a longer perspective to the business. I have like a 7 to 10 year horizon to the business for the payback, as well as actually have the flexibility to invest if the business demands. That I think is.
Jaideep, your take?
See, I'll speak restaurants, restaurants here. I feel a person putting up a restaurant needs to know the pitfalls of the business where you are. For example, most cases what happens in restaurant industry is that people think that it's very easy money, you just need to put up a little bit of funds and then the cash comes rolling in, but it's a very intensive business.
It's called the sunset industry.
Absolutely. Completely.
You know why that is, no?
Yes.
It is to settle your sun.
And as you rightly pointed out, you stop listening to your people in your family who said, no, I've seen this in Thailand and I've seen it in Dubai and that's what I want. It doesn't work that way. So yes, understand the pitfalls of the business, number one. And number two is make sure you have very deep pockets. And that's very, very important.
Great. Vineet, your take, one point that you think?
One point is that you should know what you really want, and you should know how to get what you want.
Okay, interesting. Suma?
Spend adequate time in planning and get the right team on board, because there will be challenges during execution, but if you have the right set of people, they will help you overcome those challenges because they know what is to be done in circumstances. So I think spend enough time in planning and get the right set of consultants, advisors.
Great piece of advice to conclude on. Get the right set of consultants like JLL. We're here both to do your feasibilities and to do your PMC. So that's a great piece of advice on which we'll end this discussion. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We enjoyed this celebration. I hope all of you did. We'd be happy to answer any questions. Don't promise you that we know all the answers, but we'll try. It's a very content and
Do we have any questions?
audience. Mr. Hassan.
Let us have a microphone over there, please.
Siraj, I knew you couldn't hold back.
Hi, I'm Siraj from Siraj Indian Architects, Bangalore. I must congratulate all of you. I think it's a very interesting session. And of course, I shall dwell upon what I can do or cannot do, or have not done. So this is all about timing. Every hotel, and we all know that, and everybody involved, I mean, the collective responsibility for one way or the other, whether to do it in time or don't do it in time. We've done hotels, I promise you, you're sitting with me for heaven. It started in 99, and we commissioned the hotel in 2003, 3.5 years, 200 rooms. 5-star in Chennai, so it can be done. But the whole thing is now we're talking about timelines, and Vineet also very clearly spelled it out, and so did Suma, Venkatesh, about how we should plan. First of all, of course, you have to do the hotel positioning. What is the hotel? Who's the end user and what is the hotel going to be? And how you plan it out, and how you budget the positioning and work backwards. But then forget working backward. How do you work forward? Now, when you do all the timelines for the hotel, complete you do before that, before you start the hotel, before you get onto the DSC drawing, before the design closure, you know what you're getting into, what kind of a hotel it is, so you made up your minds. But when you make all the schedule, now as architects, we do a complete list of drawings, the numbering of drawings, the schedule, the deliverables, all the drawings, architecture, and interior drawing. And there is a time for us to do that. There is a milestone. The same, I think, should be enshrined in that sequence of construction and the programming. And one of the main things is a sign-off of the owner. The owner has to sign off properly once and for all, and look at the windshield and not at the rear view mirror to go ahead. Because we get stuck most of the time for sign-offs. Because once the sign-off is fun, when you ask them, not everybody, but sometimes when you ask them to sign off, they feel that you want to sign, you don't believe us. It is not that, but then we have to know what, in the middle of our DFCs, one major design change comes in this hall. So you can't really squarely blame them, but I think the owner's sign-off is extremely important, and after that, we can change a little here and there, but not in the overall macro concept of what you're trying to project as a reality.
I think, Siraj, we've all been emphasizing on how important it is to sign off on drawings at the planning stage. And you were saying that it's important to get the sign-off. Having said that, in India the sign-off doesn't mean very much. Even after the sign-off, owners will change drawings.
All I'm saying, Mandeep, that you must
when they want to change drawing.
You enshrine that in all your bar charts.
Yeah.
When is the sign-off?
The only thing that is happening now is gradually owners are beginning to understand that when you do 8 revisions of a drawing, the architect's fee will need to change.
Nobody gives us that.
He will be asking you for additional money, right?
Across the seas.
I was just talking to our head of PMC for hotel. He was telling me that the average revision of drawings in the Indian context is between 6 to 8. So, typically that's the discipline that we need to learn. That's what Vineet spoke about. That's what Suma spoke about.
And one last point, let the owners not go to Europe till we find that.
Yeah, there should be a travel. There should be a travel ban. We should have a travel ban during the period of the not only to the owner, all members of the family.
I think we are okay with you charging us extra after our rate.
Yeah.
Don't stop us from going to Europe.
Thank you very much, very considerate.
Hi, this is Dave from Saint-Gobain. So we spoke about the construction pace which is happening right now. But how much importance do owners give for faster construction technologies? Like in case of management contracts model, we noticed that the brand might be aware of faster construction and they prefer going for some construction technology like drywalls and all that. When it comes to the owner is still hesitant. And there's a mismatch between the PMC architect and the developer and the brand. So that the loop doesn't get closed there. And when you see abroad, people generally go for faster construction technologies. In India, it's like completely lacking. So what are your inputs on how probably the market should pick up on this?
I'll tell you what my experience is and allow Vineet to speak on it because he's an owner. Typically what happens in the Indian context is that it's part of the owner traveling abroad and seeing things happening differently overseas. And the reluctance to do it in India comes from the fact that we don't have enough proof of concept of some of those technologies being used here successfully. They're either new technologies or experimental technologies and therefore the hesitation often to use it. But Vineet, if you have a different take.
No, I tend to agree with that. What happens is that owners' comfort levels have to be there with the new technology. I think that is one. Secondly, as I mentioned right from day one, that we have a budget for our. Unfortunately, what happens is that we are offered new technology at a huge cost in India. That doesn't work out for us. If our per key cost goes up, and our entire financial feasibility goes out of the window. So you come back to us with a technology which has a proof of concept that we have seen working for hotels. For example, you're talking about dry walls and all. Then the issue of soundproofing comes in, a whole lot of issues come in. So as long as you come to us with proper technology, with a good proof behind it, and at a reasonable cost, we are game. You approach us, we are at Brigade.
Madhu, please.
Microphone over there, please.
Madhu, if you'll stand there, you will know where to bring the microphone, please.
We've been talking about project delays, and I think there's another very big element that I want the panel's opinion on. The general contracting approach world over is very successful, and I think for an owner, however project management, contracts, etc. we have in position and monitoring, but do you think this general contracting approach will mature in our country in times to come?
Madhu, you're a seasoned hand, you know the answer to that question. But in any case, I'm going to let Sujjain talk about contracting and what he thinks is going to happen as we go further.
Yeah, right. The whole point, in both what Siraj said, what from Gupta said, it's also an issue on how those contracts are designed. And in the beginning, if you remember, I also said, stop following just a liquidated damages regime and look at a carrot and stick policy. So what, of course, Siraj is looking at the difference that you would define as between a variation and a change. Okay, and what he is looking at is value engineering. And what I think Vineet will have in his contracts is that you are obligated as someone who's partnering with me, whether as an EPC contractor or just a contractor or a designer, to bring forward to me as the owner things which will help me either reduce time or costs. And then it is up to me to decide whether I want to take it forward, and I'm willing to share the benefits of that with you. We've seen it in large-scale construction contracts, where this kind of contracting is now taking a lead. Because a lot of the infrastructure projects have the government on one side, they don't necessarily have the discretion or the confidence as bureaucrats to try and give this kind of policy out, because they say, no, you must dump all the risks on the contractor, otherwise you're not being fair to the government. So it's separate when it comes to the government being on one side, but where it is the private sector involved, I think certainly that sort of modern thinking in contracting is going to help create all of this.
All right, I think we should wind up with that. We sort of probably exceeded our time a little. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure being here on this dais. And a big thank you to all my wonderful and esteemed panelists. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, if you could please pose for the camera.